Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 14 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. Favorite story? Well, two of them. One involves candy, another one involves a monkey. Let's get to it. Case file number 3246, written by Terry New. Candy or Madness? My girlfriend and I were in my bedroom while she was playing with a chocolate golden coin wrapper, Halloween and all. She was standing on the right side of the bed, and I was on the left, near the window, right next to the trash can. She decides to throw the balled up golden wrapper into the trash can. She misses, and it lands in a little pocket on the curtain, directly next to me. I'm only half paying attention, but I notice what looks like a Nerd's gummy cluster sitting in that pocket. Naturally, I assume she tried to toss it into the trash and missed too, so I pick it up and pop it into my mouth. Immediately, she yells, "What are you doing?" and bursts out laughing. I'm confused and say, "What? It was a Nerd's gummy cluster." For context, we'd been eating those earlier in bed and finished the bag. She insists we ate them all. She's still laughing and yells, "That was a wrapper." I open my mouth to show her the gummy, but between her laughing fit and the low lighting, she doesn't really see it. I swallow the gummy, and then we spend the next 10 minutes arguing about whether I just ate a golden chocolate coin wrapper. She's absolutely convinced I did. At this point, I start having a mini panic attack because she keeps suggesting I somehow imagined the gummy and actually ate the wrapper. I felt like I was in a Black Mirror episode with the reality-altering necklace. I was genuinely hurt that she didn't believe me, especially because I believed her when she said she threw the wrapper. That's why a glitch in the Matrix feels like the only explanation. I know what I saw, touched, and ate. I'm a relatively sane person. She's since moved on from the whole thing, but it's eating me alive. She's going to bed tonight fully convinced I swallowed a ball of tinfoil. It had to have changed form mid-throw or something. I even dug through the trash trying to find the actual candy wrapper, which I cannot find. Maybe I hallucinated an entire Nerd's gummy cluster. Maybe I triggered an alternate timeline? I have no clue, but I can tell you for sure it didn't taste like tinfoil. Have you ever bitten into candy where just a bit of the tinfoil wrapping was left on it? Maybe with like a Henry, not a Henry, the little kisses of chocolate. What the hell's the name? Why can't I remember the name? The chocolate that's like a cone shape and you just pull a piece of paper to unwrap it. Anyways, sometimes there's a piece of tinfoil that gets stuck on that, and you immediately taste that, and it's disgusting. It has a weird texture to it. If you ate a tinfoil wrapper, there is absolutely no way in possibility of the universe, unless your mouth doesn't have any sensation, that you didn't realize it was tinfoil. So whatever you did eat clearly wasn't tinfoil. The wrapping maybe was tossed to the side, or maybe it did morph for a brief period via a different universe. I do like that idea that different universes that are very close nearby items can shift or even morph between each other. I mean, that would explain a lot of diopia and reappearances too. Case file number 3247, written by Narrow Guarantee 734, The Blue Silhouette. When I was a teen, maybe 2017-ish, I was home alone and doing dishes in the kitchen with earbuds in. I was in a full jam sesh while scrubbing, head banging, dancing, and everything. Suddenly, I felt that instinctual feeling when someone is staring at you. When you turn your head without even thinking about it, and there, just maybe 2 feet away, was a silhouette of a man, like made of this blue hazy light. No discernible details, but you can tell from the shape it was a man. I paused, stunned and trying to process what I was seeing. He seemed to notice me looking back in that split second, and with literal blink and you'll miss it speed, he blurred away down the hallway in a streak of blue light. I stood there frozen for maybe 3 to 5 seconds before I decided to follow, simply to verify that no one else was home. The entire house was empty, and I didn't see anything else that night. I tried to rationalize it, but my mind circled back to the moment I noticed eyes on me, how there had been no sound or movement to alert me because I could only hear music and was looking down into the sink. It was a feeling of eyes on me that made me look up. the human reaction of someone staring. Chills just thinking about it now. The kicker, my grandfather had passed about a month prior to this, and he didn't get to see us much. On a separate occasion, when I had moved out as an adult, I was leaving my bedroom for a midnight snack, and when I opened the door, there was someone nearly face to face with me. I froze in the doorway, but I was more open to it this time. Same blue light silhouette, but different stature, different person. No visual detail, but he felt familiar. His height, the point where we met, felt like standing in front of someone I used to know who long passed. I recognized him, said his name like a question, blinked, and he was gone. Case file number 3248, written by Hoodoo Child, the ghost who called me monkey. I was about 5 years old, but I remember it clearly. I came from a huge French-Canadian family. My dad had 7 brothers, and we all lived on the same block. My favorite uncle, by far, was my Uncle Bernard. He drove a moped, grew plants in his backyard, and listened to 70s rock non-stop. He would always pick me up and take me out for ice cream and didn't ignore me or shoo me away like the other adults did. We would fish together, and he was one of my best friends. I woke up one night to the feeling of someone sitting on the edge of my bed. I looked up, and my uncle was there. He told me my dad was going to need me to be extra good, and I would have to help Mom take care of my brother and sister for a little while. He ruffled my hair and said, "Who is my girl in the monkey suit?" When I would get angry, I would climb a tree and refuse to get down so my dad would have to get a ladder to get me. My uncle always called me his little monkey. Next morning, at breakfast, I asked where my uncle had gone. My parents were confused, so I told them the story. As I was finishing, my uncle Robert ran into the driveway sobbing, and my parents ran outside. My Uncle Bernard had died in his sleep that night. I stood in the window, confused as to why everyone was crying. My mother was so shaken, no one was able to speak the fact that my uncle was dead, not in my presence. My grandmother, a crabby old Irish woman, pulled me aside at the funeral and told me I was very lucky to have seen a spirit and that the world was full of them if you know where to look. I was just a kid. I was scared crapless. I didn't understand anything. Everyone in my family treated me differently afterwards. If ghosts exist, what else does? My parents always told me to not be afraid of ghosts, vampires, etc., because they didn't exist. I judged reality based on my experience and not the words of others after that. I love cute stories like this, and it's just wholesome, where someone has a pet name for someone they love, and it's reciprocated in kind, and even though sometimes it ends poorly, and that's just the nature of life. Now, quantum immortality makes it smooths things out, because he's probably not actually gone for good, from his perspective. And he still has his little monkey in a different universe. Case file number 3249, written by Keeper of the Trees, The Third Glass. Every night, my husband gets the water glass from each of our bedside tables and brings them downstairs to refill them. He says it's dust water if they aren't refreshed each night. One evening, I heard him go upstairs, come back down, and set the water glass on the kitchen island. This is normal as he refills them just as we're going up to bed, but he will often bring them downstairs if he's already there. I walked into the kitchen and saw there was only one glass on the kitchen island, which seemed strange since he always brings both. I briefly wondered if he only brought his own glass down, but that would be highly unusual. Even if we're fighting, which we weren't, he still gets us fresh water. As we go downstairs, with 2 fresh waters, he hands me one, which I place on my bedside table, and note that there isn't an old glass from the night before. I think, okay, so I guess the one glass he brought down was mine. Maybe he didn't have the old one. I went into the bathroom to do my nighttime routine, and when I came back out, I immediately noticed that there were 2 water glasses on my bedside table, and one on his. I said to my husband, "That's so weird. I swear when I put down my water, there wasn't another glass here." He looked at my bedside table and said, "That is weird. When I was bringing down the glasses, you didn't have one on your bedside table, so I only brought my own." So he didn't see the old glass to bring it downstairs, and I didn't see it when I set down the fresh water just now. But it appeared a few minutes later, so now we have 3 water glasses upstairs. I note that the bedside tables are fairly small, and mine usually only has a book, water glass, and some chapstick on it. The water glass wasn't hidden behind any other object. Case file number 3250, written by Amy Boy. Latin, beneath the moss. When I was roughly 16, myself and 2 friends were walking through a local forest. Now, off the beaten track of this forest, there was this random gravestone with a skull and crossbones and Latin all around the edges. We often went for walks to it, so intrigued by how random it was. One day, we decided to give it a bit of a prodding and a poking, so we got a shovel and tried to move it around, to no avail. We even tried just to speak to it, no response of course. We walked down the trail, silently, after the weird, eerie intensity of speaking to a long-dead corpse passes. I walked slightly ahead and Laura and Chris followed behind. After a good 10 seconds of no one speaking, I picked up on Laura just humming and singing under her breath. Quiet and hushed, but still imposing. It was pretty beautiful. That continued for about another couple of seconds before she burst out laughing along with Chris. Enter the batshine crazy part. After the laughing subsided, Chris said to me, "You sing like a girl." We argued for about 10 minutes, both claiming the other party was trying to wind the other up, and realized what the fuck just happened. Clear as day, a voice in front of them, behind me, was singing. Laura cried, and we were on the fucking verge of it too. You get a lot of spirits that have a good singing voice. And if I was a spirit, I don't have a good singing voice, but I could just, imagine that. People visit my grave, and the echo of me, the imprint left behind, is just there, narrating stories, just like a campfire ghost. I could see that being me. Case file number 3251, written by Big Drippy Dump. The Island Guest. I was a pretty big skeptic of the paranormal until this happened to me when I was about 20 or 21 years old. A little backstory. My family used to travel every summer to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, then go to Drummond Island. From there, we would take a pontoon boat out to this 3-acre island that had a house and just relax there for a week or 2. Now, the people who rented this house joked that it was haunted because it was apparently some doctor who made a house call years ago and the patient died. Of course, we were all skeptical, and it turned out for the first 3 vacations, nothing weird happened at all. Then, on the 4th vacation, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. To give you an idea of my bedroom, I shared it with my sister, and when I sat up in bed, I would be facing a little nook that her bed was situated in. This meant that she would have to get up and around the corner of the room in order to get past my bed. So anyway, I get up and the room is pretty dark, and I get cut off by a figure matching my sister's height from her part of the room. It goes into the bathroom, closes the door, then turns the lights on. I think nothing of it and sit down and wait, just thinking it's my sister. Eventually, after 5 minutes, the lights turn off, the door opens, and the figure turns to go downstairs. I follow it, wondering what my sister is up to at this hour. As I follow it into the living room, it sort of dissolves, and I can't track it anymore. I turn the light on and see nothing in the living room or kitchen. I go back upstairs and turn my bedroom light on, which reveals that my sister is fast asleep in her bed. I had trouble sleeping the rest of the trip, and more weird things started happening to me. Items and luggage thrown around, things gone missing, etc. I haven't gone back with the family since. Well, not too much to say about the story, but it's just a funny reminder. I was thinking about the little island where in Harry Potter, the Dudleys take Harry for his birthday. They're just on this island that's rocky and waves are crashing into it. Like, how do they even get there? You can't get a plane there. You can't get a boat there. They're just on this most isolated island on the planet. Just, okay. Tangent over. Case file number 3252, written by Jacket Damath. She was full of foam and secrets. A few years ago, I was standing out in the front lawn, talking with my mom while she watered her garden. Suddenly, we hear a loud moaning coming from the upstairs window, my sister's room. My mom laughs a bit and yells, "Hey, what are you doing?" to my sis. No answer, just more moaning. Curious, we both head inside and walk upstairs. My mom attempts to open the door to her room, but it's stuck. She starts pushing hard to get it open, and says, "This isn't funny, open the door." Finally, she's able to wedge it open enough to peek inside, and she sees my sister lying on the floor in front of the door, foaming at the mouth and making strange noises. My mom screams and calls 911. I peer into the room and see a homemade Ouija board laying next to her body. She had been playing with it by herself in her room almost every day for the past month. I didn't think much about it at the time. Paramedics show up and says she's had a seizure and take her to the hospital. They do every test under the sun on her and conclude that she's perfectly healthy. She's never had a seizure before, and she has had no underlying issues that could have caused it. A couple weeks later, she tells me what happened. She had been playing with the Ouija board that day, and she said the piece was acting stranger than usual, and moving very quickly when she would ask a question. It kept asking her to take her clothes off. Then the piece started freaking out and moving everywhere, and she heard multiple voices start chanting, "The devil is here, the devil is here," and her body locked up. Soon afterwards, she said everything went black. Okay, this is a scary one. When it relates to demons or ghosts, not a lot scares me specifically, but this one, because it seems like the spirits were able to directly influence her into having a seizure. I haven't heard of spirits being able to do that. Maybe they can influence the synapses in our brains. Spirits are known to control electronics, so maybe they can influence the fields in our own brain enough to induce the seizures. Pretty scary though. I don't like that. I really don't. Case Fallen 3253, written by Elange285. Dexter's Leave. So I had this coworker. We'll call him Dexter. Dexter was always kind of a weird guy, socially awkward, and kind of hard to be around. I hung out with him after work, mostly because I felt bad that no one else wanted to be around him. After about 8 months of knowing him, Dexter decided to join the military, and we parted ways. To be honest, I was kind of relieved that he was out of my life, for at least a while. I hadn't seen or heard from Dexter for a few years, and had pretty much forgotten about him when one day he called me from a payphone, needing a ride from the bus station. I asked him what was going on, and he says something about being on military leave. He hangs up, and I start to wonder why his parents wouldn't come get him, why he'd choose to call me, since we hadn't talked in so long. I drive to the bus station to pick him up, and I started to notice something is up. He has all of his military gear with him, and he's being very vague when answering my questions about his family and what has happened in the past few years. He asked me if he can come over to my house and talk and hang out like we used to. I'm not really up for it, but I'm curious to find out what's going on. We get back to my place and I try to probe him with more questions, but he just deflects them and insists we play some video games. A few hours go by and I eventually ask him if he's ready for me to take him to his parents' house. He looks at me with this half-angry, half-confused stare. He says, "I thought we were friends." At this point I'm starting to get a bit scared. I tell him that we are friends, a lie, but that I have to work the next day and need to get some rest. He says he can't go back to his parents' house tonight because it's too late, and asks if he can crash at my place. He promises me that he'll call his parents in the morning and have them pick him up before I leave for work. I reluctantly agreed and let him sleep in his sleeping bag on the floor next to my bed. We both got settled at around 2:30 a.m. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper and passed out within 5 minutes. Around 5 a.m., I woke up because I had to use the bathroom. I roll over and start to move the sheets when I hear a soft breathing. I look over and Dexter is sitting in my desk chair next to my bed, staring at me. I jump up and ask him what the hell he's doing. He responds, "I just like the way you look when you're sleeping." My heart starts to race and I'm getting pretty angry and uncomfortable. I say the first thing that comes to my head. "Don't ever do that. I rush off to the bathroom to compose myself and try to figure out what to do. After a few minutes, I came back into the room. Dexter starts apologizing and telling me how much of a friend I have always been to him. I get back in bed and tell him to go to sleep and we'll talk in the morning. After about 20 minutes, I hear him snoring, but it still takes me the better part of an hour to finally close my eyes and fall back asleep myself. My alarm wakes me up at 9 a.m. I roll over, anticipating the worst. Instead, I find that Dexter and all of his stuff are gone. I check all over the house and find no signs of him at all. I look through my old address book for his parents' house number. I call them over and over again throughout the day, but no one picks up. I spend the next few days waiting for Dexter to show up at my house or call me, but he never does. It's been over 4 years and I haven't seen or heard from him since that night. I wonder if he did anything to his parents. Case file number 3254, written by Anonymous. 1 pint too many. I used to work in an old pub. I was there completely by myself one afternoon. No boss, no staff, no customers. I was taking the opportunity to royally slack off when I heard footsteps slowly coming up the stairs from the cellar. I figured I must have been daydreaming and totally missed someone coming in and going downstairs, so I grabbed a cloth and started to look busy, polishing the ale pumps. I heard someone come up the stairs and walk behind me, brushing my shoulder. I turned around to talk to whoever it was, but there was nobody there. I remember being more annoyed than anything. I was always so proud of my skepticism, and some stupid ghost came along and ruined it. Other stuff happened too. The landlady lived above the pub and was redecorating. She had put brand new unopened paint tins on the floor, which were opened up and spilt everywhere when she came back from a shopping trip. The pub is next to a railway line, and bodies of people that were ended on the tracks used to be brought up there back in the old days. One of the old regulars remembers a railway worker bringing in a detached brain storage unit to show off to his buddies. The crap people got up to before TV, eh? Case file number 3255, written by 515000, The Watcher of the Bridges. I have had 2 dealings with a person watching me and disappearing faster than humanly possible. Both of mine were the same figure, and close enough to make out distinct features and expressions, like 30 feet away. The first time was outside in the Strip in Vegas, in an almost empty parking lot at around 3 a.m. I felt someone looking at me, and when I looked, the man was impossibly tall, like 7 feet, maybe a bit more, kinda stern, and looking almost down his nose at me. I remember shivering once, hard, and looking away. Then when I looked back over, he was just gone. No cars around him to hide behind, no nothing. I didn't even feel like I was being watched anymore. The second time, and 15 years later, I was walking in the beach in Olympia, Washington at dusk with my little doggo. It had just snowed about 6 inches of nice powder, and I had the beach and park to myself. Then my dog started this really neat sounding low chest growl, and I looked up to see what he was grumbling about. And that same guy, the 7-foot tall dude in the same long overcoat with the same stern stare, close enough I could see his jet black eyes and wrinkles in his face. I was standing there in the fresh virgin snow, clear as day in the last fading sunshine and gray sky. I glanced down at my pup and whispered at her to stop the growly stuff. Maybe 2 seconds, I don't know, but when I looked up, homie had skedaddled with no noise, and no footprints in the snow. The only thing there was the aftershot of his memory burning in my brain. No blue on those guys, but I've seen purple glowing figures, way more when I was young, only a few in adulthood. Also, real quick, right before COVID, I remember reading an article in some science group saying that the outer space was a deep purple color or indigo, and it was only at night did I see what I can only describe as huge, like the size of a gymnasium, patches of purple fog in random places, mostly over bridges, but also over people's homes and in parts of the tree line of the highway. Case file number 3256, written by Likes to Rave Dave. Hey, he does like to rave. Duncraig's Midnight Visitor. When I was about 7 or 8, I lived in a small house in Duncraig, near Perth. My parents' bedroom was on one side of the house, and mine and my sister's were on the opposite side. Our bedrooms came off a small hallway. Mine was about midway along the hallway, and my sister's were at the end. It must have been about 11 p.m., and I was lying in bed asleep. I heard a bang and was forced awake. You know when you were a kid, you would lay there and think about scary things in bed, then you'd freak yourself out and listen really hard because you thought there were burglars or something? Well, I did that. I freaked myself out. My bed was just across from the door, so I could see straight into the hallway. I was lying there, and I saw a figure across a door. It's hard to explain what it looked like, but I remember that it was cloaked, like you'd imagine the Grim Reaper, hood and everything, and I remember it was floating above the ground. I remember checking for feet, and there was nothing there. I was mature enough to think I was imagining things, so I ignored it and tried to get back to sleep. I was dozing off when my sister screamed. My dad ran through to see what was wrong. I walked in when my dad was trying to explain that she was just imagining things. My sister was about 6 at the time. I interrupted, "But Dad, I saw it too." I explained to him what it was, and he said the only hooded cloak type thing in the house was his dressing gown, and that was impossible because it was in his room. I was scared, so I asked him to check. On the way to his room, we found his dressing gown on the floor in the living room next to the TV. He had a puzzled look on his face and sent us both to bed. I was absolutely terrified, so I decided to lock my door and sleep with the light on. When I woke up, I'd completely forgotten the events that had taken place, but when I decided to get up and get dressed, I remembered. When I stood up from my bed, my feet felt material under my feet. My dad's dressing gown just lay there, as if it was standing, facing the bed, and then just crumpled. It was impossible. My door was locked. I told my parents and they just said I was being silly and trying to scare my little sister. Case file number 3257, written by Philly Z, The Torpedo in the Sky. To preface this, I live in a place with an abundance of UFO sightings, once quoted as the county with the most in the world. It also doesn't help that Signs was filmed in my town. It was about 2 months ago. I was out and about digging around town in my car. I was en route to my friend's house on a road hardly traveled that spanned the length of an old cemetery. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a giant, mildly luminescent mass seemingly floating in midair. Being a skeptic, I turned to get a gaze at this inexplicable figure. It looked like an enormous torpedo, about 75 feet in length, veiled by a cloak of glowing beads. The crap that gets me, however, is that it was just floating about 50 feet in the air, not suspended by anything. I stared at this thing in utter disbelief for a solid 5 seconds before it was momentarily engulfed by the night sky. It just disappeared out of thin air. Case file number 3258, written by Sayaspi, Mary's Last Night. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I had a very vivid dream. It was strange because I rarely dreamed, and if I did, it was always in the random context a child would dream of, cartoons coming to life, etc. The dream starts with me sitting in a large chair. I immediately recognize the room as a living room of our family friend Mary. To my right is the hallway towards her bedroom. Straight ahead is the kitchen. I'm sitting there calling out, but nobody is home. The light is shining in through a window on my left, casting light on the floor, but the rest of the room is fairly dark. I remember walking forward and peering down the hallway. Standing in the hall is a tall, slender figure. It has a shape but no details. It's as black as I can imagine, but just a silhouette. As it looks back at me, all sound from around me vanishes like a deafening silence. It is hard to describe, sort of like a static on a television, but without the actual sound. The dream went on for what felt like forever, just the two of us staring at each other. For some reason, I walked towards the shadow man, though even thinking about this dream makes my heart hurt with fear. I look down and see blood. It is pooling in the carpet. As I went to turn and run, I felt like I couldn't move away, and the creature rushed towards me. At that moment, I woke up. The next day, I went to visit Mary. though I didn't share my story with her, as my mom told me it was just a nightmare. Just after supper, I was sitting on the big chair in the room watching television, as Mary walked down to her bedroom. For whatever reason, I remembered my dream right then and began to cry. Mary collapsed in the hallway, landing face first on the floor. Blood from her nose and face pooled within the carpet. She had suffered a massive heart attack. My mom tried to comfort me after the paramedics came to stop my tears, but she didn't understand the tears came before she died. I remember every detail of the dream to this day. It's hard to even describe in words the details. I remember the colors, the mood, the sounds, even the light as it came in through the windows. I'm highly skeptical of ghosts, predictions, psychics, and all other paranormal stuff, but I can't help shake the feeling that the dream and her death were linked. What I'm thinking is, from the perspective of the mom, if you have a kid like this that told you about a dream, and then just that same day, the dream basically comes into reality, how do you square that in your mind? I mean, you have direct evidence of something beyond typical explanation. What do you even tell your kid if that happens to them? Like, do you confirm that, yeah, okay, you have extra special powers? I really don't know how I would react as a father if I had a kid that had a dream like this. Wow. Case file number 3259, written by the 8th Henry. The Clattering Silence. One night in my old house, I was getting ready for bed, when all of a sudden I heard dishes being moved downstairs in the kitchen. Since I was living alone at the time, it naturally startled me, but the sound was very clear and continued for probably a good 4 to 5 seconds. It wasn't a one-time sound like you would expect from a stack of plates settling into each other, because they were a little offset. It was a clank, rattle, rattle, shuffle, rattle, rattle, clank, clank, rattle, clank. There were dishes being moved by a physical force. I immediately became alarmed that someone had broken in. Right off the kitchen was a glass sliding door that led into the patio, and I was concerned that maybe I didn't lock it, or it had been picked and someone had come through. I stood at the top of the stairs listening for any other movement, but there was nothing. So I yelled down, "I'm calling the police, so take whatever you want and get out." The only thing was my phone was downstairs in my home office charging, and since I don't have a landline, that was my only means to call the cops. Total bluff. I listened. No movement or sounds. I waited a few more seconds thinking maybe the person down there was startled and trying to be quiet, but there was still nothing. So I pretended like I was there with someone, and loudly asked them if they had called the police, and then said, "Good, good." Then I instructed my companion to follow me with the gun and cover me while I went down. I slowly went downstairs and peeked around the lower I got. Nothing. Finally, I was at the bottom of the stairs and looking into the kitchen. Still nothing. I hit the light switch that turned on a light in the kitchen, and the sliding door was closed, and I could see that it was in fact locked. So I proceeded into the kitchen and found everything perfectly fine. There were no dishes out of place on the counter, nothing in the dishwasher, and everything in the cabinets was fine. For good measure, I checked the rest of the house, and of course, no one was there hiding out. I know the sounds were more of a random clank. There was something other than gravity that caused the dishes to clank and rattle, but I have no idea what. Now time for the jokes of the day. Satan arrived to welcome a new damned soul to hell. "Congratulations," he said. "You wasted your entire pitiful life." "Well," the man replied, "at least I'm not an adult living in my father's basement." Got him. Although, he's probably not going to appreciate that. He's going to get the pineapple. If you know, you know. I saw an ad that said, "Radio for sale, $1. Volume stuck on full." I thought, I can't turn that down. No matter how many socks you put on a bear, it will still have bare feet. Who can shave 30 times a day and still have a beard? A barber. Got fired from my job as a masseuse. Apparently I rub people the wrong way. Yeah, that would be a problem. Video up here, YouTube thinks you'll like it, check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you guys next time.